Diana, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me here.
Of course. For those of us who don't know much about you yet, tell us who you are. Who's Diana?
Yeah, so I am a mechanical engineer and I'm also a content creator. I am the founder of Latina Engineer. You can find me at Latina Engineer, Latina_engineer. And I'm just really passionate about motivating Latinas in engineering. I'm also an immigrant, and so I grew up in Mexico and then I migrated here where it's kind of like I learned like I needed a community to connect with. And so I do my job and then I also advocate a lot for Latinas.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's start to dial way back a little bit to get some history on you. You immigrated from Mexico, and then where did you end up in the United States?
In Chicago.
In
So
Chicago.
my dad got relocated and the families packed their things and we came to Chicago and we were coming for 1 year and then we've been here for almost like more than 12 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, at what point in your childhood did you realize that you were in love with STEM?
I'm not sure. So both my parents have like careers in STEM, but I never
Okay.
really like it didn't like lean me that way. It was when I was in high school. I was almost done. I was a senior. I took physics. So I always liked math and I just didn't know what to do with it. And then I took physics and I was like, I can connect it to the real world. And that's what guided me through like STEM, the engineering world, and then eventually I landed on mechanical engineering.
Wonderful. And what did your parents do?
My dad did it was like industrial and communications engineering, and then my mom did industrial design.
So it's great to have two amazing role models to have kind of help you through some of that journey and everything and understand a bit of what you're going through. So you landed on mechanical engineering. What was it that drew you to that field in particular?
Yeah, so definitely sticking with math because I like doing like all the equations. Like it just made sense and there was not a language barrier. And so math just it was numbers. It didn't matter if it was in English or Spanish.
Right.
And then just eventually like I also really creative and that just led me to connect both of them because you're creating something that you can picture in your mind and then eventually it turns into something like a chair or a bicycle or a phone. And so you take both worlds and you put them together.
Awesome. So you ended in mechanical engineering. What was your goal? What did you want to do with mechanical engineering? What is there something like was there a certain thing you were wanting to build?
No, I think it was, and that's where I feel there was a little bit of an obstacle. Like
Hmm.
I like the subject and what I was studying, but I wasn't fully clear on what I could do with it. And so I
Sure.
started exploring as I started learning my classes, meeting other people, having mentors, and I think that's something that I try to address a little bit, like what opportunities you can have, especially besides from having an engineering role. Like right now, I have social media and like I'm a speaker, so like I've been able to take it to more than just designing something which I love, but I have learned now that there's way more opportunities than that.
Yeah. And where did you end up going to school?
I went to Northern Illinois University, so it was like 40 minutes away from my house, so I was commuting back and forth.
Wonderful. And tell me about that experience for you as a Latina in an engineering program. What were some obstacles that you realized that came with your ethnicity?
Yeah, well, the first one was being an immigrant. I still, even though my parents went to college, they did in Mexico. And so I was learning the whole process of getting to college
Right.
in the US. And so that was a big thing. But then the other thing is, you don't look like the rest of the students as a Latina in
Mhm.
engineering. And so you start seeing that there's less and less women in classes. And I always felt alone. And it was very challenging because it starts like imposter syndrome. You start thinking, like, I don't belong here, I'm not smart enough. And it was just kind of like sticking with it because it was like I had that goal that I wanted to do it. And eventually I started getting better and I started getting the confidence. But I think if I had found a community sooner, I would have had way better time in school.
Yeah. And so what kind of strategies did you have to develop to combat the feeling of being isolated and kind of like the only one who looks like you? Like I imagine that's very taxing in that environment.
Yeah, being home helped, but I had my parents and they always supported me. Like if I did bad in an exam, they would leave me a note before I left to school and like they were always supporting me. And then I met my husband in college as well. And so he was always there helping me as well. And I think if you have that, like even if it's a small community, if you have that support, like people that believe in you, that helps you out a lot.
So what did that community end up looking like? You said it took you a while to find to surround yourself with those people. How did you find those people? How did they come into your life?
So, I mean, when I was in school, it was really close. My family, my boyfriend, who's my husband now. But then once I got out of school, I had to go out and look for it. And so I
Mhm.
started my own page and I started connecting with people right away. And I was like, why didn't I do this before? And so I had friends that were Latinas in STEM and engineering that were all over the country. And now I could, even if I went to work and I was the only one that was like Latina or a minority or the only woman in engineering, I had like a group chat and I had my friends that I could connect with and share about our ups and downs or successes or questions that we had.
So what led to the creation of Latina Engineer?
Feeling like I was the only one. And so it
Yeah.
was kind of like I wanted to find, I knew there had to be more people. And the school was in the suburbs of Chicago. So you're not downtown. And so there's a little bit less diversity. And I wanted to find just one more person like me. And so I started just open a free blog and started typing my experiences. I had a good experience as a professional, early professional. And I just wanted to tell someone else, like, hey, school was hard, but I made it. And like, you can do it too.
What was the impact that that had on you? Because it comes from a place of feeling like the only one. You're sitting here now because of your page and the success it's had. What did it feel like to realize I am not the only one, and how did that change your experience?
Personally, it has added a lot of confidence to myself, like going from I don't belong here to I have everything I need to succeed. I can be whoever I want to be. I can wear pink every day to work if I wanted to. And then also learning that there was a need to connect with others like myself. Like even just finding like my domain for my website was open and it was really strange because it's so simple.
Right.
And then just knowing that there were things that we needed, like scholarships, the career fair, things like that. And that just makes me happy that I was able to make it more than just helping myself, but also helping others.
When did you start to realize that it was like taking off, right? Like when was there a moment of like, wow, there are so many people that are benefiting from the content that I'm making and from the community that you're creating?
So it was during COVID. So we were all home. I went to work and I came back and there was nothing else to do. And there's like Engineering Week and like day like Women's Day. And so I wanted to make something to celebrate Latinas in engineering. And I just grabbed my calendar and I wrote like International Latina Engineer Week. And I put it on my Instagram. And people started making hashtags. They're asking me what was gonna happen, what speakers we were gonna have. I had nothing prepped. And so in 7 weeks, I came together with like the Latina community, and
Wow.
we put together speakers. We fundraised for a scholarship just with a GoFundMe page, and we put it together. And this year was the fourth year that we hosted, and we have like just continuously growed every year.
Wow. And talk to me about the growth from that first year to the most recent year that you've done this.
Yeah, so started like it wasn't even meant to be a conference, and now
Yeah.
it's 800 people registered virtually. We
Wow.
have almost 200 in person. We have awarded $16,000 in scholarships, and then we have a mentoring program that has about 50 mentees and like half mentors, and so it's doubling almost every year. Like the numbers just they double, and that just lets you know that people like it and that we need this.
Yeah. So as all this was going on, what was the transition from your educational career to your professional career like?
It was actually very smooth, and I was surprised of how I didn't really feel much of a change. So I always lived with my parents through like the first 2 years from after I graduated, and so I didn't feel that big of a change. But I landed a job 6 months before I finished college, and so I was already doing the work before I was done with school, and so I felt like I was just doing a little bit more hours than I did before, and so that just made me feel confident about I can be a successful engineer, and then just started learning because like I started and like I had to negotiate my first offer with like the help of like my boyfriend, and then what was like 401k and what. So those things were a little bit complicated to understand, and those were kind of like the things that I also started focusing on sharing. Like, hey, I didn't know
Yeah.
this. Like maybe someone else also needs to hear it.
And what was the first job that you had? What were you doing?
I was a manufacturing engineer. It was electronics it was commercial, but it was also military. And so it was like bus bars, heavy duty cables, like the diameter of a cable was like, I don't know, like 4 inches.
Wow.
And so they were pretty heavy.
Cool. You said cables, and I think of all the cables I brought here to record the podcast on. And thank God they're not all 4 inches wide. So that's amazing. And then you're growing this support system for not only yourself, but for so many other Latina engineers. And I'm at a loss for words because I feel like it's an amazing journey then to see, just by sharing your experiences, how much of an impact that can have. What are some of the feedback that you've gotten from being open and vulnerable and sharing your experiences, and how has that impacted people?
I honestly, I'm surprised when people like reach out to me like, "Hey, you have inspired me," because like I don't feel like I have like the most amazing career or like I work at like the biggest company or anything like that. but just knowing that you're going like focusing on your own and you're happy about it helps others also know that there's a path for them. They can find what they do. So it's still like strange. I'm still like not used to it. But at the end of the day, I just think of like the overall goal. Like even if it means like sharing something that maybe was hard for me to overcome, like maybe an uncomfortable comment or a situation, somebody else can learn from that. And then I also get better at dealing with those things.
What are some of the best pieces of advice that you've received in this journey of people sharing their experiences together?
The main one that helped me just be so proud of who I was, where I was coming from, the accent that I have, was that my accent makes me sound like I'm smarter because I know more than one language.
Okay.
And that just has stayed with me through my
Wow.
entire
Yeah.
career because when I got here, I was 12 years old and I had to learn English right there and then, or I was going to start like missing like school years because it was like I was just dropped right into like it was like sixth or seventh grade. And then after that, I just kind of learned that I didn't need to like sound like a perfect English speaker, and that my bilingual skills gave me more opportunities, and I was valuable because I was able to communicate with more people. And I have been able to use it in all my jobs, English and Spanish. And I'm really surprised, but I'm also really proud of that. That has brought me to be, valuable as an engineer.
Yeah. And so we talk about your journey becoming a content creator or an influencer, and those words carry a lot of different meanings and connotations in our society and our culture today. And so I can imagine that there were lots of difficult moments explaining what you're doing to some people. How did you deal with overcoming some of the stereotypes that come with being a content creator?
A lot of allyship. So like always having that community that's gonna support you. A lot of the times, yeah, it's hard to explain. Like I'm a content creator and I make videos, and like if people are not familiar with Instagram or like any other platform, then you kind of like maybe it's harder to explain and say like, hey, this is what I do. But it's very interesting. So now wherever I go, like if I'm looking for another engineering job, I always get asked about Latina Engineer and like everything I do outside of my engineering job, which is very interesting. But people have accepted it so much and people are very interested about it. And so I'm happy that it has worked that way.
Yeah, and I think there's a built-in sort of validation and justification, right? Because it became this amazing organization, and you have these tangible ways that you've made an impact of the amount of people who have benefited from your conference and from your scholarships that you've raised. And I know that you don't need any validation from me necessarily, but it speaks for itself that it doesn't matter what the connotations are, what the perception might be of what you're doing. It's making real impact, and so it speaks for itself, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm really happy. And if you had told me that I was gonna be doing this like when I was younger, I would have never believed you because I was a kid that was going through her teenage years and I was just trying to fit in, trying to learn English and trying to find what I wanted to do.
And then you're here at SHIP National Conference in Salt Lake City. How did you end up here? Tell me about finding SHIP for the first time.
Yeah,
How did we
so
catch you?
this is second year I'm at a conference,
Right.
and so I was already really excited because last year it was awesome. I loved it. So I connected with Ship because of my friends that are also content creators. We have a community, and Latinos, we're staying really close together, and so I'm really glad that we have that. I had learned about SHIP when I was in school, but because I was always commuting, taking my siblings to their parent teachers
Right.
conferences, like I was always really heavy, like helping my parents and my mom specifically. And so I wasn't able to participate or be in like the club that was part of the chapter that was part of my university. And so now as a professional, I had the opportunity to learn. And the community overlaps with what I do. And so it's really true to what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy that I'm here. And, we're all day, we're running around, we're meeting people, we're learning about their experiences, something that I really wish I was part of when I was younger.
Yeah. And then looking forward to the future and the impact that you've been able to already see the ship has, what excites you about the kind of work that you're able to do in partnership with SHIP and with Latina Engineer, and what both of these sorts of organizations are going to be able to achieve in the next several years?
Yeah, I'm always paying attention to like how many Latinas are in STEM, how many Latinas are in engineering, and the numbers are still low. So, with this collaboration, I hope that we can reach more Latinas that are interested, tell them that there's room for us, that we can be whoever we want to be. We don't have to fit like a specific as the way that we look or the way that we are. we actually just posted one that is like when they tell you that you don't look like an engineer and you're like, oh, well, but I'm still an engineer and I can do everything just as good. And so I hope that we start seeing that gap being filled and having more Latinas knowing that there's this space for them to be successful.
And what do you think are some of the most important things to focus on as we look to the future in including more Latina engineers in the industry? What are some of the things that we need to be focusing on to bridge that gap?
Definitely catch people when they're young. So, I like math, but I didn't really know what to do with it. So, how can we tell students that these are all the opportunities that you have, that STEM is not a boring job, that, physics sounds intimidating? What are the opportunities, and show those role models that sometimes, like me growing up, I didn't see as much. And then the other part of it is once we're professionals, like what else can we do? How can we keep growing? We made it, and I feel like sometimes we need to keep catering and keep walking them through their years of experience. I see it when we try to find Latina engineer role models for mentoring. Sometimes it's hard to find someone with more than 5 years of experience. So how can we keep bringing them back to the ones that are in college or are barely entering STEM and telling them like this is what someone that already went through that looks like now.
Yeah. And I think it's one of the things that I know being involved here at SHIP that they do really well is continuing to encourage all of the members to not stop growing. Like you get into your career, you've made it. Okay, but that's that milestone. You still have more to go. You still have more to grow. And a big part of that is paving a way for future Latinas to join the engineering fields and making it so that they can achieve bigger and greater things than even we have to this point. And so I think that's something that it sounds like it's huge on your heart as well in everything that you're doing. And I just want to give you the floor for a second to talk about why is it so important to involve more Latinas in engineering fields? What are the industries and these companies, what do they have to gain by hiring more Latina engineers?
Where do I start? There, I when I talk about this, it's mostly like the diversity that you bring by bringing, or the points of view that you bring by increasing diversity into these roles. Like you are including people that have been growing up in different countries, know different languages. And so if you're designing a product that's going to cater, for example, the general public, you need to have that representation in the team. If not, you're not going to think about like, what are you missing? Like, for example, as a manufacturing engineer, I had to think about like, okay, if someone is shorter or it's like smaller, or, comparing it to like how, like maybe I'm shorter. So like connecting it to that. And you need to have that in a company to be able to cater like that. And so the richness that comes from all those different points of view, you can only achieve if you have that diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's other layers of the hurdles that you guys have to jump over and get past to get to where you are now, because not only are Hispanics and Latinos underrepresented in engineering fields, but women also. And so you have both of those things historically working against you. And so I would like to talk a little bit about what is the importance of seeing that Latina representation in the fields, having Latina role models and examples to look to. Why is that so important for inspiring the next generation of Latina engineers?
So I have learned through some of the content that I make that motivational content is usually the one that does the best, because we just need to feel inspired. Sometimes we feel like we can't solve a problem, or we got a bad grade and we feel stuck, and then that's when imposter syndrome starts kicking in and you think you should change careers or you can't do it. But then something comes and it just kind of like gives you that motivation. And so we need to keep working towards like showing that and knowing that there's other people like that. One of my goals when I started as an engineer was I want a manager that's like a Latina or is a woman, so that I can look up to someone as well. When I was a student, I have female mentors that were minorities, that English was their second language, and I could see myself in them. And I would always go back to, if they can do it, if they're successful, I can do it too. And so it's also important that we have those role models in industry so that we can say, they did it, I can do it. We can chat with them, and they're also accessible where we can ask those questions and learn from them.
Absolutely. And I see that you are already sporting a ship Lifetime pin here. And so how excited are you to be able to be partnering with this organization that's so closely related to the heart of what you're doing as well, knowing that, again, you're not alone in inspiring Latina engineers. What is your excitement for the future with both SHPE and Latina Engineer?
Yeah, well, my favorite part about here is just being around so many people, so many Hispanics that are in STEM and they share so many ideas with me. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to continue coming here to the different conventions, continue being involved in the different chapters. They're local and they're also like just connecting with them, giving talks to schools and telling them about my journey, but also anything else. And so I'm really happy with it. It's only the second year that I'm here, but I am just like from the first year, I was like, I want to come back and I don't want to stop. And I wish I had joined when I was younger. It was just, I had those limitations where I also had obstacles with time and travel and everything. And so I can't wait to continue see it growing. I can't wait to see what else we can do together because again, it overlaps with my true mission or like my true passion that I want to keep working on.
Absolutely. So you were telling me about how you spent some time today at the career fair, gathering stories from people going into interviews and things like that. Is there a story or two that stands out from today?
So actually, Jay Flores, he captured one of the students in a video, and it was just amazing. He already went and then shared it with everyone. But just seeing the excitement of someone just sharing like, hey, I got an offer, and like, can I call my parents? Can I tell them? You know, I know when I first got like my first role, it was like I want to share it. Like you get so proud of what you've been able to accomplish. So just seeing their faces and their excitement. We were walking earlier around with Sonia Camacho, and we were holding a sign that said, "Did you get an offer? Like, we want to hear about it. Like, we just want to hear the stories." Like, I just get so happy to see everybody else also be successful.
I really resonate with what you're saying because this is my second convention as well. And last year, I was fortunate enough to interview so many members and talk to them at different stages of the convention. And I remember I had on the first couple of days, I was just reaching my head and hand into the hallway and just grabbing people, pulling them in. It's like, you're telling me your story. And they were all so eager to talk about their journey and their aspirations. And it really helped me to fall in love with the community here in SHPE, the familia that they've grown. And one of my favorite parts of convention was one of the later days. It was probably about this time on Saturday. I was in a more centralized part of the convention than we are this year. And I would have my door open whenever we weren't doing any interviews. And someone that I interviewed earlier in the week would pop in and go, "Alex, I got 3 job offers." And they were just so excited. You could tell I was not the first person he had told, and I wasn't going to be the last. Yeah. And it was so beautiful to just be a part of that experience and see the joy that overcomes them from the opportunities that SHPE has been able to provide for everyone. And it's the word that I keep coming back to for it is contagious. It's this energy that you can't help but be moved by. And I'm so excited to have you as a part of moving all of this forward with us and for doing it with Latina Engineer as well. I want to talk a little bit about where you're at now. Are you at the same job that you got out of graduation?
No, I do not. I have changed roles twice actually since I finished school. So I'm a product design engineer for climbing equipment. So the company does construction equipment, storage, and climbing. And I'm fairly new at the company. I've been there for about 3 months. But it's also just a combination of, I do that and Latina Engineer keeps growing, my conference keeps growing. And so I'm working like 24/7 all the time, which I am so passionate about it that I don't feel tired working on it. But it's definitely interesting to see all of that revolve because you start finding passions that I have my engineering job. I love it. I'm learning every time I just learn something new. But there's also like a bigger calling that is like, hey, you can help so many people when you keep making content, when you keep hosting a conference. And so I'm in that in between where it's like, they're both so important to me. Like, how do you maximize and how can you do the best impact?
If I let you go full engineering nerd for a second, what are some things that you have been working on, you've seen, whether it be technology, innovation, what have you, that get you really excited for the next 5, 10, 50 years in engineering?
I think with because I'm a mechanical engineer, so it's a little bit different. I mean, AI has taken over the world, but it has not impacted so much my field. It can still do it, obviously, but like it has not. I have not felt it so much yet. I work with FEA, so finite element analysis, and you take something, you tell it, hey, apply a force this way, like pretend you're squishing or bending something, and it tells you where it's gonna break, at what force is going to break. So maybe in the future I can be like, hey, do this analysis for me, and I don't really have to like do much, and it will tell me like what's gonna happen. And so I see that maybe happening in my field, and that will be exciting because it's a faster way to design something and make sure that something's going to work. That, you know, if someone is climbing something or, you know, they're sitting something, they're not gonna get hurt, and it's gonna be safe for them.
Yeah, and what it does is it allows you to maximize your potential as the engineer. And I think we've obviously had so many conversations about AI and other emerging technologies, and we obviously could spend some time talking about some of the things that are potentially negative or dangerous or what have you. But I think there is, particularly in the example you give, there's so much potential for this because it doesn't take away from what you do as an engineer. What it does is it empowers you to then use your skills, ability, expertise in more areas by streamlining that process, right?
Yeah.
And so that gives so much more potential for innovation that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of.
Yeah, it just gives you those skills to, you know, work not because you want to like rush it like faster, but like you have way more potential to create something even better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we go, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and for being a part of SHIP's conference and being a part of the SHIP Familia. Can you please tell us about where we can all follow you to learn more and keep following your journey as Latina Engineer?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me, by the way. You can find me on Instagram at Latina_engineer. And then my website is latinaengineer.com. And our conference specifically is ILEW.online.
And what do you have coming up next? What are the next things you're doing?
So we will have a mentoring program application opening in the spring. We might also have scholarships then. And then just our annual conference is in the fall. So we'll have a whole year to plan it. So just kind of like stay tuned to know where it's going to be hosted and more opportunities that we're going to have.
And obviously, if you're listening to this right now, in the description below, wherever you are, we'll have all of that linked right there. So you have no excuse to go and follow Diana and all the amazing work she's doing. Thank you again for sharing your story with us and for serving both the SHIP Familia community and the Latina engineering community. You're doing great work. I really appreciate the time that we got to spend together.
Thank you so much.